To Matthew chapter 7. As we take a look at the reality of the resurrection for today. Resurrection isn't just a past principle, it is a present promise and reality. It has direct implications for your practical life today.
It is an unexpected sight as you cruise the waters of Lake Whitney.
It's just ridiculous putting it that close to the water.
A nearly $1 million home dangling off a cliff.
And that's what we kept looking to see if anything was going to happen right then.
Neighbors Connie Ash and Jackie McNamara have been glued to their binoculars since Tuesday when they first heard and then saw the land beneath this home give way. This morning they discovered the back porch had collapsed into the lake. From the water, you can now see straight into the house.
And what else is it going to do except fall in?
That's the question now, when or even if the rest of the home will collapse. Experts aren't sure what is causing the land to crack.
We may not see another movement for several months. Who knows? Or it could, these rains coming in could soften the ground below it, and it could go away sooner than that.
Documents show a husband and wife have owned this home since 2012. It was built in 2008. Authorities say the couple became aware of a crack in the cliff earlier this year and had moved out all their belongings as a precaution. Well, they're currently out of town watching this all play out from afar.
I have never seen anything like this. Not in Texas.
We were allowed into the gated community of White Bluff this afternoon and saw security guarding the home from the front. But from the back, an entirely different picture of a home vulnerable, unprotected, collapsing piece by piece.
In August 2013, Debbie Ward, Maggie Gamry, and their families were looking forward to a trip to the area's amusement parks.
Every year, my sister Faith and my nephews Grant and Liam, we like to come down so that the boys can go to the theme parks.
The two families checked in at the Summer Bay Resort in Claremont, just outside Orlando.
We played around a little bit, kids were jumping on the bed, put our swimsuits on, went to the kiddie water park.
After a long day of swimming, Maggie and her son went to grab a bite to eat before heading to bed.
As I was walking into my room, I heard a window explode.
I was in the bathtub and all of a sudden we heard this loud boom.
My motherly instinct kicked into full gear, couldn't get out of there fast enough.
My sister had at that point called down to the front desk and asked them if we'd had an earthquake. And they laughed and said, "Oh, we don't have earthquakes in Florida."
But what they do have was becoming frighteningly apparent.
The landing was moving, it was buckling at that point. My sister's yelling at me, "Debbie, let's get out of here." She's just screaming at everybody to get out. And we're rushing the boys out of the unit.
As the building crumbled, confusion reigned.
The tiles on the roof are starting to come off. Glass is popping out of the windows. The landing towards the elevator is buckling, so we took a left. We went towards the stairs. Adrenaline's going. We're screaming at everybody in the building at the top of our lungs to get out. Something's going on.
It almost seemed as though the building was just imploding, turning, as if it was in a vortex, as though it was being consumed in quicksand. It was so surreal.
When every one of these families actually entered into their, what is considered a safe place, they didn't realize the foundation that they were actually building or living on. I want to ask you today to think about this in your life. What is your foundation? What are you building your life on? What foundation are you building your family on? How do you go about deciding how you live, why you live, what values you follow? I can't imagine building $1 million on a foundation that is going to fall and give my home a complete crash. I remember as a kid growing up in Colorado and going into the canyons and seeing some of the houses sometimes that literally have their kitchen hanging 200 feet over the air. And I remember my father saying to me, I would never build a house on that kind of a slope. And I understand what my dad was saying at that time. And I want to encourage you to hear the words of Jesus Christ today. Because you see, the foundation matters. When those folks built that house, they expected it to be beautiful and wonderful, and it was for many years. And often, sometimes, as families and in our own lives, it appears the foundation we've chosen is actually working out. But I want to tell you something. If you build your life without God, you will eventually begin to realize that your foundation is faulty and it will fall. Sometimes it can come so quickly and you don't understand how all of a sudden it happened, but each brick, each part of that foundation that we lay makes a big difference. And I want to encourage you today to hear the words of Jesus Christ, who in his Sermon on the Mount illustrates the fact of the importance of foundation. The importance of foundation. How many of you remember 93? I do. I remember watching a house be washed away in Illinois. The levee opened and the water flooded through, and that farmhouse became every news story on every news program that night. I remember actually also something similar. The Burger King boat. You know about the Burger King boat? I lived in St. Louis at the time, so I had more opportunity to know about it than you do. But that night, the Burger King boat broke loose, went under I-70, and was leveled to its foundation because it was high in the water and the bridge and the gap were too small. The tie was not strong enough. Again, the foundation didn't hold. I want to encourage you to think about this because this is really important for you and I. I believe every one of you here wants to build a life and a family that has beauty and wonder and joy. But I also want to tell you that if you build it on a false or faulty foundation, that it will crumble. And the moment it begins to crumble, sometimes it's very hard to realize what's happening. You don't realize until later that that foundation is not going to work. I remember early on in my life, Jesus Christ saved my soul, my mind, and my life. That's not a trite statement. I'm not a follower of Jesus Christ because I'm a pastor. I didn't want to be a pastor. Some days I still don't want to be a pastor. You can understand that, don't you? But the fact is that Jesus Christ saved my life. And I did not become religious. I became taken over. I became born again. I was transformed. My mind was changed. My heart was captured. And I am very thankful as my life goes along to see that this foundation of Jesus Christ is holding. It is most certainly tested on a regular basis. I'm not going to go in on my life, but we could all share our stories, couldn't we? And I want to encourage you today to understand the words of Jesus Christ. And the reason you need to listen to Jesus Christ is because He is the one who has the power to take something that is dead and destroyed and make it alive and living. And that's what resurrection is all about. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 and following, everyone then who hears these words of mine, get that? What are the words of God? What are the words of God? They're the Bible. They're the Bible. Anyone who hears these words of mine and does them. Have you ever told one of your kids to do something? Huh? And they heard you? And then what? They didn't do it. I forgot. Why didn't you do it? I don't know. Did you hear me? Yes. Well, what I want to understand is that the Bible is very serious about the reality of not only hearing it, but doing it. Not only hearing it, but doing it. And Jesus emphasizes here, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. But it did not fall. Everybody has trouble. Everybody has issues. Everybody has challenges. Everybody lives and has difficulty. Every relationship is going to have hardships. So there's going to be wind, there's going to be rain, there's going to be shaking. But only that which is built on a solid foundation will last. I saw recently in the trailer, not the movie, but just the trailer, The Big Short. And one of the quotes I saw of one of the gentlemen, don't know who he is or anything, but I watch trailers. I like to watch trailers. It's the Reader's Digest of what's going on in the world. Amen? My family hates it, but anyway, I do it. They're like, we don't want to watch any more trailers. As I was watching that trailer, I saw one guy saying to everyone, when did we forget that greed does not work? It's a good question. I'll tell you when we forgot. Is when we threw God and prayer out of the schools. When we threw God and prayer out of our homes. When we threw God and prayer out of our society. That's when we forgot. The whole world is about to learn a lesson about greed. You don't maybe know it all together, but trust me, it's coming. But that's not my job, and nor is it my principle, or I'm not going to change all that. I just want to encourage you to realize today, hear the words of Jesus Christ and do them, and you will build a firm foundation. That when the shaking comes, that which cannot be shaken, also known as the rock, will stand. In this passage it says, and the rain fell and the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and it beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. I remember one morning at our house in St. Louis, my son Seth, at the time about, 5, 6 years old, he comes in and he goes, I can put my cars outside. Like, well, that's good, Seth, that's great. It's wonderful. And then I began to think about what he said. He was talking about he could push his cars outdoors from his bedroom. There was a problem with that. He didn't have a door in his bedroom. I went into his room and I said, where are you putting your cars outside, pushing them outdoors? Right there. I looked over there and the floor of the house was 6 inches from the bottom of the wall. And he could literally reach outside and play with his cars in the yard. He thought it was cool. I was devastated. After further investigation, I found out that the people that owned the house, somebody, I don't know which particular occupant, had decided to enclose the breezeway. In this particular area of St. Louis, you had a house, you had a continuous roof, you had a garage, and in between was a breezeway. Many families, to be able to increase their space, actually enclosed that breezeway. The only trouble with that is that they built the walls on a concrete pad that was never meant to what? Hold walls. And as that 93, which was actually a drought in St. Louis, you don't realize it because it was so rainy here. But in St. Louis, it was a literal drought, and more foundations were cracked that year than in the history of St. Louis. And the pad that was actually meant to be set into a key, meaning the floor went into a key, pulled away, and my son, while he was sleeping, dropped 6 inches. I want you to understand, I had no idea that that foundation was faulty. I would never have bought that house if I'd have known that was possible. Just so you know, we fixed it. Took a lot of work and a lot of effort, but we got it done. But I want to remind you today, it may seem as if your life is going just fine, but if you're building your life on yourself, if you're building your life on principles contrary to God, if you're building your life on things that do not last, someday your foundation will crack and you will experience the fear and the frustration of a difficult time. But it will come and your foundation will be proven. I love Joshua, as in verse 15 of chapter 24, and if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord. Have you noticed that it's evil to serve God today? It is. It is actually. If you serve God, often you're not exactly as popular as other people. That has changed. Do not expect to lay a foundation of God and have people around you pat you on the back, because it's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that it's a faulty foundation. Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And this is something I would like to encourage you to think about today in your family. God can cure any home. You saw those houses that were crumbling? The resurrection power is the proof that God can take and give a foundation where no foundation exists. He can take what's dead and make it alive. He can take what's broken and heal it. He can take a life and change it and redeem it. He can change relationships. He can change anything. My friends, I encourage you today to understand this. I want you to think about your family. I want you to think about your house. Singles also. Singles live in a home. Singles live by a principle. And I want to ask you this. Is the foundation of your life a foundation that will stand for all times, all places, and especially in death? I ask you to think about it. I want to urge you to think about one thing, and I want you to get just one thing today. Okay? Turn to your neighbor and say, just one. I have seen many a family turned around by just simply laying a foundation of prayer. I remember talking to a family that had years, almost a decade of difficulty. I asked the man of the house if he would just simply lead his family in prayer. And he agreed. I saw him 2 weeks later, and I said, "How's it going?" He said, "You won't believe it." I said, "Try me." He said, "Everything has changed. Everything has changed." He didn't pray in Greek or Hebrew. He didn't pray in systematic theology. His prayers were simple. He led his family in prayer. I want to encourage you today to pray, to lay an actual foundation upon God, to pray as a family, to pray as a family. Lay a foundation of prayer. That's what I'm asking you to do. This is Easter. I'm asking you today to pray. This is a simple prayer. You could pray. It'll be on the website. I'll put it out in an email. If you want, I'll pay for your tattoo. But the fact is that now you've really freaked out, haven't you? But I want you to know something. Put it as a frontlet to your forehead. Put it on the doorpost of your house. Make prayer a part of your life. Because I do believe that when you pray, everything will change.
We all know where our blessings come from. And for me, that's from God. And no matter how many fans come out or 100,000 people are cheering, I know that my strength and my ability is from Him. I never really thought my struggles were something that it was just on me. I always felt like I had a hard heart towards God and just resisted it in every way you could. And all the failures and all the tough times growing up and a single parent home and just a rough childhood, all those things led me to resist God. And finally, when I opened my heart to Him and I met my wife, that was really when I knew that God had a plan for me and that He was what I needed. Really, God He didn't resist me. He took me in His arms and just showed me what life is all about and really what I'm here on earth to do, and that's to live for Him. Every decision I make, I try to make it for God and use the right judgment to do so. Obviously, I make mistakes. I still fail every day, but I know through Him and His grace that I can have everlasting life. And I walk with Him every day. I talk to Him. It's like He's my friend. Well, my personal relationship with Jesus is personal. That's exactly what it is. I mean, God's blessed me in so many ways, and my family, and I've just learned so much with Him. And having life without Him and really resisting Him in my life, and now to a point in my life where He's so involved in it. Everything I do is that relationship with Him. That's what my life's about. And I really want to spread the word of Jesus and know the impact that He has. So without Jesus, I'm nobody. Definitely humbled by Him and my relationship with Him. I'm Jason Witten, and I am second.
Mother Teresa said, "You want to see peace on earth? Go home and love your family. Go home and love your family." I want to encourage you today. Pray. Pray. Do not let a day go by without praying. And men, I want to encourage you fellas. I know you're not comfortable with words, and you may think I am, but when it comes to the most intimate part of my life, I am a deaf mute. It's hard for me to speak. It's hard for me to get my words out. But I want to tell you fellas, please, if you have charge in your family, please lead your family in prayer. Lead your family in prayer. Those of you that are single, and that's more singles than marrieds, would you please pray? Pray with another single. Let's see, you have Snapchat, Facebook, Hangouts, FaceTime, texting, cell phone. For goodness sakes, folks, there's a million ways to get together, and you don't have to be in the same place. And I want to encourage you, singles, pray with somebody else. Pray with somebody else so that you have the strength of a threefold cord that is not easily broken. I encourage you to think about this. I want you to understand that Jesus Christ is a resurrection power, and that if you know Him, you will know His power, and He can change anything. Amen? Would you bow with me? And I'd like to encourage you to pray this prayer out loud with me, okay? Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. All God's people say, Amen. Let's stand together. I've asked you to do one thing today. I've asked you to do one thing today. I've asked you to pray. Pray as a family, pray as a single, but to pray, to lay a foundation that is indestructible. As we sing, you decide how that's going to happen.